Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Yes to Fitness podcast, the podcast for winners looking to better themselves through fitness. So this is my second solo podcast of the series since I started my podcast, and today's subject is all about consistency. So this was a subject that was suggested from one of my question boxes on my Instagram stories after seeing what you as an audience would like to hear about. And I think it's a great subject that can be related to fitness and why a lot of people struggle to commit to their self-growth, whether it be to grow muscle or lose weight, their fitness goal, and can easily give up after not seeing results after a month or two, even though they feel they have been sticking to their nutrition plan and their training plan to some extent. I also feel consistency is something I can correlate to a lot of subjects that I want to talk about over the next few months. So I thought it would be a good idea to talk on this subject sooner rather than later in my podcast series. So let's jump in and let's cover what it means to be consistent, what being consistent can help you achieve, and what you can implement to help you if you struggle with overall act of consistency. So what is the definition of consistency? Well, according to the dictionary, consistency is the quality of always behaving or performing in a similar way or always happening in a similar way. Now, I like that they use the word quality in this sentence. It almost suggests to me that consistency is going to add value to your life in a positive light, as though it's almost like a positive trait to have. So just to repeat, if you didn't hear it first time, consistency is the quality of always behaving or performing in a similar way or of always happening in a similar way. So it's that repetitive nature. So let's talk about what being consistent can help you with. So this podcast is about self-growth, improvement, fitness, bodybuilding related. So let's talk about one of them subjects. Consistency will help you to create a routine that makes achieving your goals a smoother task, and consistency will also speed up the results. So how can you relate this to your fitness goals? Well, if your fitness goal is weight loss, consistency can really relate to your nutrition. It's a subject that is often overlooked and, if not documented, can get lost with how consistent you are actually being with your nutrition. So consistency is that act, like we say, of being repetitive. So consistency to me means being on your diet 7 days a week and every meal of your diet. If you want to be consistent, it's not picking 4 of your 6 meals for 6 days a week to be consistent and the other 2 meals and 1 day, say, nearly 20 meals a week, not being on plan to create consistency. To me, that is not consistency. Consistency is having your set off-plan meals and achieving or eating every single one of your meals on plan and nothing else. That's what gets you consistent with your goals. And again, you can relate it to growing muscle as well as the nutrition side of things. If you're not eating all of your meals and you're only eating when you're hungry, you're not going to grow at the rate you want, and you have to relate that back to your goal. But again, it works with the training plan. If you're cutting your sessions short and you're only doing 5 of your 7 exercises, and you're doing that 6 days a week because you're on a 6-day training plan, you're missing 12 exercises over the week. That's nearly 50 exercises a month that you're missing. So the consistency isn't there to relate to the goal you want to get to. And again, you can relate it to the term of ticking boxes. That's a term that I often use, here thrown about a lot by various people, but I think it's a good one to use. And consistency is about ticking boxes that will help you to reach the goal that you want to achieve. Set the tasks you need to achieve your goals and tick the boxes off as you go. that's creating consistency, and eventually it will create second nature. These tasks will be done without even having to second guess that you're doing them. Now, what I'm saying is, it sounds like consistency is a lot like routine, and they have their similarities, but to me, consistency and routine are not the same thing. With routine, you normally set yourself a time restraint, as in you set yourself a time that you want to do it. Routine being, say you want to go for a walk, you would normally write your routine, your daily routine, so that the walk would be in the morning and you'd set that. Whereas consistency doesn't have to be about ticking that box that you done your walk at 7 a.m. It's about just getting them boxes ticked. Routine is writing down the tasks and sticking to a time constraint, whereas consistency over a day is getting everything that you've written down on that list done. It doesn't have to be done in a certain order. So routine is really creating a lifestyle that works for you to enable you to be consistent. If you've got a job that's 9 till 5, and then you have the kids to feed in the evening, etc., then possibly getting up and going for a morning walk to do your cardio would be a routine. Now, consistency would just being that walk got done on a certain day. So it's almost as though, routine is a building block to help create consistency. Now, I made a statement earlier that I personally believe that consistency is why a lot of people struggle with their self-growth. And I just wanted to elaborate on what I meant by that. So, consistency is difficult to see and achieve with a busy lifestyle. We might think we're being consistent with our diet and our training plan and our cardio because we've done cardio and we've trained 4 times that week and we've had our breakfast the same every day. However, the diet plan or the nutrition plan we've set was maybe train 6 days a week, 6 days cardio. So you haven't actually ticked off your boxes to achieve the goal that you've been set. So what I sort of meant by that statement was, yes, you are making a step in the right direction and you are possibly getting fitter, losing weight, gaining muscle, etc., but you're not doing it and accelerating that rate to the amount that you want and you see other people do, and then you second guess as to why you're not, and you start blaming other areas or taking the thought away that you're doing everything you can because that's what you believe. But unless it's documented, you don't realize how much of a percentage of the tasks you've been set each week have been missed. So if you've, for example, like I say, only trained 4 out of 6 days, you've only achieved 66% of your target. So if your goal was to lose a kilo that week and you jump on the scales and you've only lost half a kilo and you question why, well, the maximum you could expect to have achieved is 0.6 of a kilo because you've only put in that 66% of the effort or ticked 66% of the boxes that you were meant to tick. And that's where it sort of correlates and why I say, that people struggle to commit to the self-growth because they don't see the results coming in quick enough because the consistency isn't there. And it's not a criticism. This is not me saying, people can't deal with consistency and it's all wrong. It's just me trying to elaborate on my belief as to why we need to reflect on our week of how it's been and implement consistency in a way that we do manage to tick all of our boxes. So that's where I sort of now move into what you can implement to help you if you struggle with the overall act of consistency. And that's what I sort of wanted to get out of this podcast, was to help people that do struggle with consistency and just to open up eyes to why we may not achieve the goals in the time frames we expect, and why often sometimes people are deterred from committing to what they're doing because they do genuinely believe they're ticking the boxes that they need to do to achieve the results, when in actual fact, if you look at it from a percentage wise and break it all down, that what they're actually doing and the rate they're progressing is relative to the amount of boxes that are being ticked. So again, what can you implement to help you if you do struggle with the act of consistency? And the first point I want to touch on is you need to identify what you need to be consistent with. So what is it that you need to be consistent with to achieve your goals? And again, as I've said, this podcast is all about sort of fitness and self-improvement. So let's take the example of training and a plan for you, and relate consistency to that. So, if you've got 6 tasks or 6 cardio sessions to do a week, then identify that is something you need to be consistent with, and make sure that it's on from a Monday to a Saturday, for example. Plan. Sunday you might have off, as you're only doing cardio 6 days a week. And again, your nutrition and your training is also something that you need to be consistent with to achieve that goal. So get this on the plan. Are you supposed to train 5 days a week? Then tick the boxes off. If as the week goes on, how many times you train. If you've got 5 meals you need to eat in a day, then tick these off. Every time you have them, I've had that meal. That might be more of an example of muscle gain rather than fat loss, because being consistent with eating and overeating to gain muscle is often a key that sometimes can be missed. So again, first point I wanted to touch base on there was identify what you need to be consistent with. Now, the second point may sound a bit like routine, but I would prioritize important tasks in the morning because you get them done. Now, this can relate to another subject on cardio and why people do fasted cardio. There's often an argument out there of fasted cardio is better than doing cardio in the evening and timing around cardio. And for me, I don't believe there's any best time to do cardio. The only time I wouldn't suggest doing cardio is prior to a training session. But the reason people do fasted cardio, and often I do fasted cardio, is because when I'm in prep and I have an hour's cardio to do, if I lay in bed in the morning and then went to a 9 till 5 job and then knew in the evening I had to train, possibly meal prep, an hour in that evening to do cardio would be quite a daunting task, something I probably wouldn't want to do. Whereas if I was to then prioritize it, get it done in the morning, got up an hour earlier, then that task is done, out the way, and I don't have to worry about it. If it comes around to the evening, it gets to 9 p.m, and actually all my boxes are ticked, then you can relax for that evening, rather than think, God, I've got to go now back to a gym and do another hour's cardio, and make it a tedious task. So I would prioritize tasks, if you can, that are important and need to be ticked off in the morning. And again, I've said it all the way through. My third point for tasks that can help you or things you can implement is to use visual aids, whether that be a whiteboard, whether that be post-it notes, whether it be alarms on your phone. Use visual aids to remind you what needs to be done that day and tick it off as it's done. This will definitely benefit you in the initial stages before it becomes a second nature task. I don't have to question myself that I've got to go do cardio anymore, because I know it's just got to be done and I do it every day. It's almost, I'd be shocked if I didn't. So, make it a priority and use visual aids initially to get you into that routine and settle down with being happy that you know what needs to be done on a daily to reach your goals. Point 4 is a little bit harsher, but it's true. It needs to be said. To be more consistent, do it even if you don't feel like it. That is what's going to build consistency. Consistency builds consistency. And initially, to do that, you might have to do things that you don't feel like doing. So again, like I say with cardio, I'm going to use that as a prime example. If you don't want to do it, just get it done and you'll feel better after it. And it will create consistency in you and then become second nature. So if you really have a goal that you want to achieve, it's probably going to include some form of things that you don't want to do. It's like anything, it's self-growth. You have to push outside your comfort zone to create that. And you always feel better after doing it, but that feeling of doing it can be quite daunting. So point number 4, it's do it even if you don't feel like it. Now, to round off this podcast, my last sort of point to implement is if you have a coach and you feel overwhelmed with the amount of tasks that you have to do and you don't feel like you can get them done, be honest with your coach. Now, if what you are doing makes you feel overwhelmed, you're going to lack consistency. And I think it all relates. The stress and the lack of consistency is normally quite a vicious cycle. The more you miss your goals, or ticking boxes off, as we say, the more you feel you failed. The more stress that builds up because you feel you failed. The more you feel like you need a fresh start. So you have an off-plan meal because you think you'll start tomorrow. Then you cheat on your diet, and then you feel even more guilt that you've done that the night before, and it all just builds up in a vicious cycle. Now, that might sound like a complete exaggeration, and it probably is, but it's probably more common than not. So again, be honest with your coach and realize what you can and can't do in your day. That differs for everyone. Now, we all get the same 24 hours, but some of us are able to prioritize our tasks better than others and have less to actually do in the day. So, this might come down to whether you have kids, whether you work 12-hour shifts, etc., rather than 8. You just have to be honest. And if you can't do all the tasks that you need to do because it causes you so much stress and feeling overwhelmed, then you are much better off reducing them tasks so that you can then become consistent with it and build up from there. It's probably going to be the better approach. It might be the slower approach, but it will be the better approach to get you towards your goals. And this is why I sort of preach on my application form for my coaching, to be honest. I have a question on there about how many times you can train a week. And if it is only 3, then that's okay. Because if you achieve 3 out of 3 tasks a week, you're going to feel better than if you were to achieve 3 out of 5. Now, you may have done the same 3 sessions, but because on that plan is 5 tasks, you're going to feel like you failed compared to completing 3 out of 3 tasks. So it's always best to build on 100% consistency than try and get 70% consistent with tasks and have that possibility that you will fall off the wagon due to that feeling, that vicious cycle that I previously explained. So yeah, there's 5 tasks. 1, identify what you need to be consistent with. 2, prioritize tasks in the AM that are important. 3, use visual aids, planners, tick boxes, reminders. 4, do it even if you don't feel like it. And point 5 is more relevant if you've got a coach, or even for yourself. Just be honest with yourself about what you can achieve. So yeah, point 5, even though that was aimed and talked about, being open and honest with your coach, you can also be open and honest with yourself. So yeah, that leads to the end of sort of my podcast on consistency. And I hope at least one point out of that you can take away and feel like you have made a step forward in creating a more consistent approach to your life. This podcast is all about fitness and self-improvement, but if you can implement this into your life outside of them areas, then I'm glad it could help, and it's certainly something that you can do. You can implement this into your work life or social life. So thank you for listening to episode 8 of the Yes to Fitness podcast. The subject was consistency, and I look forward to doing a lot more smaller subjects like this for you. This is the shortest podcast I've done yet, but hopefully this has been positive for you. And if it has made an impact on you, then please feel free to share it on my social media. Let me know. Instagram is Ashlee Whiteman, or yes to fitness _Ash for my business account. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear how it helps, or if there's any sort of subject you would like me to elaborate on, then please feel free to drop me a message and I'll make sure to get round to doing that for you. So that's the end of the podcast. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much for listening.